I am talking with Jim Causley in Devon, I guess, who is a really well acclaimed, if you don't know, singer-songwriter and folk singer. How you doing? You okay, Jim?
Very well, thanks.
Jolly good. Was that description right? You are in Devon, aren't you?
I am, yeah, on the northern edge of Dartmoor.
Oh, beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. You were born there near Exeter, weren't you?
I was born in Exeter, yeah.
And have you always lived in that area? Do you find it's an area which you enjoy living in?
Oh, very much. I mean, I have lived in other places and went to university in Newcastle, so that was quite a change for me. Very different. But I think it did me good to live somewhere so different for a bit. And I've also lived in Cornwall and Somerset and almost in Essex for a bit, but I won't go into that.
No, we won't go there. Now, there is a very, very rich tradition of music in the West Country. Did you get influenced by this from a very, very early age? You know, I mean, why go into sort of the folk music style of things and not into rock or pop or anything else?
Well, I think I have been influenced by rock and pop a fair bit. I certainly heard that before I heard a lot of traditional folk. But I got involved in the wassailing tradition in my home village, Wimple, which is in East Devon, and that attracts quite a lot of folkies. So I think that was probably my first encounter with traditional music. And we're not very far from Sidmouth Folk Festival, so I went to that as a child. And then as a teenager, I was in various choirs. I was in a gospel choir and the village church choir, and I ended up joining a folk choir run by the Wren Trust, who are a folk organisation here in Devon. And they do a lot of traditional Devon songs. And so they kind of introduced me to that repertoire. Mm. And it was really from that I really got interested in traditional songs, and then started looking them up in the library. And then I got a voluntary job at the Exeter Phoenix Arts Centre when I was at college. I was studying jazz music at the time, but I got this job volunteering at the Arts Centre, so I got to see loads of different acts, including a lot of folk people like Martin and Eliza Carthy and Kate Rusby and things like that, which was really when it took off for me, I suppose, the interest in folk.
Now, you mentioned wassailing there, and what's that?
Right, for those, wassailing is an old custom which is possibly pagan. I don't know really, but it's all about encouraging a good crop of cider apples for the next year's harvest. And I'm sure there's lots of similar traditions all over the world, really, where people would try to encourage their crop in one way or another. And so this is one that's sort of mainly particular to England, really, and in the West Country in particular. And it died out quite a bit in a lot of places, but it survived in a few pockets. And Wimple is, we don't know how long Wimple wassail's been going from my village, but it was first noted down in the early 1900s by Reverend Sabine Baring-Gould, who was a folk song collector in this part of the world, a Victorian chap. And so we know it's been going at least that long. And again, like a lot of traditions, it died out during the war, the Second World War, but it was restarted by the History Society in the village. Mm-hmm. And so it involves going into the orchards, and we wake up the trees. I'm doing inverted commas here.
Yeah.
And we sing to the trees, and we bang pots and pans to scare away any evil spirits that might hamper the harvest for the coming year. And there's a sort of a rite where we have a king and queen, and it's usually two children from the village who get dressed up, and we place toast soaked in hot mulled cider into the boughs of the trees as a sort of gift to the gods, and more singing. And so it's all about basically wishing the trees well and scaring away any evil spirits that might cause a bad harvest, you see, because back in olden times, people didn't know what we know nowadays about, the seasons and about what makes a good or bad harvest, and so they tried to do everything they could, to make sure. I mean, there was traditions all about making sure the sun came back, because they really feared that in the dead of winter that the sun might not come back and life might not return. So it harks back to a very ancient time.
And of course, there is no drinking of cider involved in this at all.
Yeah.
None whatsoever.
It's all about the creation of cider. So there's they mull the cider with which is spices with cinnamon and ginger and nutmeg and cloves and things like that, and it's heated, so it's a hot drink, and then that's passed around after each ceremony. So we do it in several orchards all around the village, and each time they pass around this huge, great big bowl of cider, and everyone takes a little sip.
Just the tiniest drop, yes, of course.
Oh yeah, well, the main drinking is at the end when we get back to the final venue, and then there's lots of music and dancing and singing and drinking and eating.
It sounds like great fun. It really does. Do you feel as though you're preserving West Country heritage by doing things like this?
Well, I'm doing my little part, yeah. I mean, actually, wassails have become hugely popular now. There's been a big resurgence in them, and there's a lot more. I mean, Wimpole is very traditional in the way we do it, and we stick to the way it was sort of noted down. But a lot of them have become very commercial these days. You have to pay to go in, and they have a barbecue and a bouncy castle and everything you can imagine. So it's evolving.
Yeah. Now, in case people don't know, and I didn't know, how many awards you have won for...
I said, this is news to me too.
Well, there's BBC Two Folk Awards and Telegraph Awards.
I said, I've never won any. I've been nominated.
They're all nominations. I thought they were awards.
Never give me one.
Well, you deserve one. You should get one at least. What I wanted to do there was I was going to bring in the fact that you, together with a guy called, is it Mark Tucker, have created the Band of Love?
Yeah.
Which, once again, features some incredible folk musicians. How did that come about? I mean, what's the sort of thought behind Band of Love?
Well, so Mark is a recording engineer in East Devon, and a lot of us who are in what is now the Band of Love already record with Mark, and he's quite well known locally. He records Show of Hands and lots of other people. He's done Fluke and PJ Harvey's worked with, and
Pentangle, who are one of my favourites.
Yeah, Ralph McTell. So he's very well known, respected recording engineer, and he's got his own lovely studio in the Blackdown Hills. And he came up with this idea of taking 70s disco hits and reinterpreting them in a folk style. And he sort of put it to some of us. And I remember when he first told me, I was thinking, right, that sounds interesting. Not sure how that would work. So I was a little bit skeptical to begin with. But we started having a go at working it out and taking some of these songs. And I knew a lot of the sort of, the really big hits, but there were a few that I was unfamiliar with, I'm ashamed to say. I mean, when he first played me Born to Be Alive by Patrick Hernandez.
Yeah.
I was thinking, what on earth do we do with that? I mean, it's quite off the wall, and but actually, I really like what we've come up with. I mean, I love the original too. Don't get me wrong. So it's been a very interesting journey, and so like I say, he got these people that he already works and records with to be involved, and then he's good friends also with a chap called Ian Brown, who was the chap who sort of discovered the Fisherman's Friends. I don't know if you've come across them. A shanty group from Cornwall who have become very popular. Mm-hmm. And he's sort of taken them to a much wider audience than shanty groups normally get, sort of outside of the folk scene, to normal people. It's amazing. And he's worked with quite a few other people in the folk scene. And he's got some good contacts with record labels. And he managed to get the interest of Island Records, which is very exciting. So we've got the album on Island Records, which is wonderful and a great boost. And he's obviously very keen on the project, and he's very passionate about it. And somehow managed to get us a gig. So we'd never actually played together before. It was all made in the studio using computer magic. You know, we all came and did our bits individually, really, and built it up in layers. And then Ian managed to get us this gig at Hyde Park.
Yes, I watched and heard that, which was amazing.
Yeah, wow. It was quite a surreal day. I looked back on the website. You can see all the previous years they've done this Radio 2 Live in Hyde Park. I think they call it Festival in a Day. And what they try to do is represent all the types of music that Radio 2 plays. So it's obviously a lot of pop, but also some folk and country and blues and, you know, a bit of everything in there as well. And so I look back at previous years, and they have had a folk act of some sort every single year. So they've had Bella Head and Kate Rusby and Seth Lakeman and people like that. And so they were looking for a folk act for this year, and Ian managed to sell us to them. And he said, well, you know, it's folk, but it's also pop hits that people already know and love. And so they bought that, and I said, yeah, that sounds great. There was the only small technicality that we'd never actually played together before. So,
minor detail.
Yeah. So we had some last-minute rehearsals at the end of August, and we all got together, and it was quite tricky because we're all busy musicians in our own right. So it was quite tricky finding spaces when we were all free at the same time. But we managed to do it, and we were quite pleased and relieved that we could actually play it acoustically. You know, we could play it like a real band. So that was lucky.
So how do you feel people sort of respond to the music? I mean, as you say, most of them, or all of them really, are songs that people know. You know, things like I Will Survive and I Feel Love. They're songs you know, and yet they're done in such a different style. How do you find people react to it?
Well, we've had a lot of positive reaction. A lot of people love it, which is very nice. And obviously there have been some people that don't like it. One of the interesting things is that being with a fairly well-established label, they've sort of taken over our Facebook page for doing some advertising, and they put out adverts to the general public. So before we were just advertising to like the folk people that we already know, but so we've had these responses come back from the general public. And unfortunately, I have to say, the general public can be quite horrible on social media. You know, they'll just say any old thing. And so there's been a lot of, what's this rubbish and what's this doing on my Facebook wall and words that I dare not repeat to you, but you get the idea. But there's also been a lot of people that love it, and because I mean obviously there's people from both camps, because we're treading in two genres now. We've got the folkies and the sort of poppy disco people, so there's people from both sides who are gonna go, oh, what have you done? But also hopefully people from both sides that will also see the fun of it. And yes, well, actually one of the most interesting things I found about it is that some of the more upbeat songs, which you might not listen to the lyrics so much on the dance floor, but when you sort of slow them down and do this more acoustic version with them, the lyrics almost become a bit more meaningful, and you listen, you think, I never really listened to that lyric properly before, and it's something it becomes just surprisingly deep, you know, which has been really fascinating.
I must admit, when I first heard your version of Give Me the Night, I thought, what? And then you listen to it, and as you say, you think, hell, that's really, really good. We've been playing it a lot here, and there's been a very, very interesting reaction to it, mostly positive.
Oh, mostly, he says.
Well, once again, you know, there have been a few going, what? But most people are going, hey, that's really, really clever. Do you think that this is going to help bring sort of folk music to more people?
Well, I suppose, yeah, if they like it, then, yeah, will hopefully be the positive effect of it. I mean, there are people that are unfamiliar with folk and they don't know much about it, but they just hear that kind of sound and instantly are repelled. But yeah, I think it can only be a good thing, really, because I mean, those that don't like it will you can just turn off. You don't have to listen to it.
No, that's true.
And so yeah, if it brings a few more people on board, then all to the good, I think.
Will Band of Love become?
Disco, maybe.
Sorry, will Band of Love actually become a touring band, or are you just going to keep it as a studio base?
No, we really want to do more gigs. I mean, we just had our first taster of our first ever gig on probably the biggest stage than any of us have ever seen in our lives. It was actually, we've had different reports of how big the audience was at Hyde Park. Some people say it was 60,000, some say it was 90,000. So it was a lot. That stage is like an aircraft hangar. It's absolutely ginormous. So yeah, it would be really a shame not to. I mean, we'd love to do some festivals now, and we've had some interest from a few festivals. One of them, interestingly, is a festival called Costa del Folk. I don't know if you've heard of that.
Yes.
Oh, you have? Oh, great. And for those that don't know, they're a British organisation. It's a combination of a folk festival and a holiday. What would you call it? Well, my words escape me. But people organise holidays abroad, and so they've basically come up with the idea of putting on a British folk festival in the sun. So I think they do it in a few locations, don't they? Do it in Portugal. Do they do it in Spain?
Yes, I think there is one in Spain, but I think it's Benidorm area, up that end, Barcelona.
One in Ibiza, and they also do one on a boat on the Rhine as well, would you believe? So you have a cruise down the Rhine listening to folk.
Oh, perfect.
It's great because I think a lot of obviously British people do get cheesed off with the terrible weather in the summer in Britain. So the idea of having a lovely weather and the music they enjoy sounds heaven. So yeah, it'd be nice if they do book us. I think they've booked some of our members already individually in their different duos and things like that.
Oh, that'd be great. No, that'd be great. That really would be, because I always feel that the kind of music you produce, not decrying it in any way, but it is very live. It's very, it's one of those things that you need to see it, feel it, and be there and enjoy it.
I mean, the album is fantastic. I think Mark's done a wonderful job, and in some ways, there's a lot on the album that you couldn't reproduce live either. So it kind of works both ways. But yeah, you definitely get an experience with any music being performed live, don't you? That you don't get from just sat listening to a CD.
And I was going to say actually that the album itself, the tracks I've listened to, they do sound live. They don't sound as though they're engineered in too great a detail.
Oh, good. That's good to know. Yeah. I'll pass that on.
So well done. So you're going to go for a tour. Will there be another Band of Love album?
Well, there's certainly already. I mean, we had loads of song ideas, so we've got no shortage of ideas of what to do next. I mean, there's a lot of songs, obviously, that we didn't use because we just literally couldn't fit them on an album, on one album. So we've got plenty to do another one in a similar vein, although we've had suggestions that maybe we should do different eras, go through all the decades, because this one was very specific. Actually, it was very specifically late 70s. All the songs are, because there was a few that came up that I think I suggested some, and the Mark said, oh no, we can't do that, that's 1980 that one came out. So then, he was very strict.
All right. Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out how you would end up doing an Ibiza set, but then why not? No, that could work.
Oh my goodness. But Ibiza, although in dance music, I mean, disco is dance music, obviously from the 70s, but modern day dance music, my only fear would be the sort of the lack of lyrics, because there's usually less lyrics, aren't they?
Yep, definitely. No, but I love the album. I think the album is absolutely brilliant. The track that we're playing at the moment, well, we're going to include a couple more tracks for this because, as I say, I just think they're brilliant.
Thank you. Oh, actually, I've got a question for you, actually.
Oh, yeah, go on then.
From my mum, who... Right, asking, are you in Malaga? Is that correct?
Near Malaga, yeah.
Near Malaga. Because my mum worked with a Spanish lady who was from Malaga, who married an English gentleman, and then they've gone back to Malaga, and they've lost touch. And I was just wondering if you could put out a little shout out, possibly.
Yes, of course. No problem at all. Please.
Well, if there's a lady called Maruka Ward in Malaga who worked in Ottery or Honiton, Devon, with a Joe Causley, then she'd love to hear from you. So there we have it.
There we go. Linking friends.
Exactly.
Okay. Jim, I hope they get back together again.
That would be nice, yeah.
Yeah. Nice to know that we've done something positive.
That's what I could do with the Spanish holiday.
Right. Well, we'll try and organise a trip out here for the band.
Yeah, well, any Spanish festivals that would also like to book us,
Right.
I know there's a lot of folk festivals in Spain too.
Yes, there are, actually.
Because we don't just want to play to British people either. That would be boring.
Now, it would be interesting, actually, to see how Spanish people related to it. Because, I mean, obviously, they're going to know the tunes.
Yeah, and we find generally on the continent that audiences are even better at listening somehow than they are in our home country. The folkies are great, but it's just the non-folkies can be hard work.
I think in Spain, and certainly in Europe, there is more an acceptance of music as opposed to individual genres of music.
Definitely. I notice in Europe people are also a lot better at listening to instrumental music, which is great, because in Britain audiences have a habit of complaining if there's no singing. So
yeah, there's no karaoke bits.
Well, exactly. Yeah. We need karaoke.
Okay, Jim, thank you so much for your time. It's been great chatting with you, and all the best with the album. And we'll keep playing the singles off it, or the tracks off it, and hopefully we'll see Folk Fever 2, maybe.
So we'll keep you posted.
Thank you very much, mate. Take care.
And you. Cheerio. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now.